I am 18 years old male, I'm a high school senior and proposal season is currently in full swing. I was in my AP Chem class when suddenly an entourage of people entered my classroom with a disabled girl. She has cerebral palsy, that I know. I first saw the posters and the bouquet of flowers she was holding and thought,
Aww.
that's sweet of her. Then they revealed the posters and I read my name and was completely taken aback. I literally almost had a anxiety attack. I didn't know what to say at all and the entire class was cheering and people even started filming. I was straight up frozen for a minute and I could feel myself burning up with embarrassment. Of course I wanted to say no, but since it was so public and everyone was waiting for me to say yes, I did and hugged her. Everyone clapped including the teacher and I was mortified. One of my buddies asked me if I was okay. Afterwards, since apparently I looked like I was gonna burst into tears and I told him I literally did not expect that at all, and I didn't want to say yes. He suggested that I go find her after school or something and explain that to her and I agreed. Now, this girl is really nice. We had a class together last year and sat next to each other for a majority of it and talked quite a lot. I would say we were friends then, but we haven't spoken more than 2 times this school year, so we've definitely drifted apart. That's why I was completely shocked when she sprung the prom asking on me. Usually, people have their friends make sure that the other is at least aware before doing the asking to prevent situations like this. I was contemplating if I should just bite the bullet and go with her, but decided I just couldn't because it is my senior year prom and I was already starting to plan my asking. There's this girl that I've liked for a couple of months now and I recently heard from my friends that she likes me back, so I was gonna ask her. So I ended up going to the special ed classroom after school where I found her and asked if I could speak to her outside. I told her everything and how I really appreciated the gesture. But I was already planning on asking my crush to prom and she was crushed. She started crying really loudly and asked me why I couldn't have just said no, and I said that I didn't want to embarrass the two of us in front of all those people. At this point, one of her aides came out to check on us since she could hear the crying, and the girl told her aide what happened and she straight up glared at me and said, "That's not okay." Now I feel like absolute shit. University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't, but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue, to which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people, when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. I'm what the deaf, nonverbal audio, classify as hard-hearing, HH. Because I can communicate with hearing person without resorting sign languages or notes. I met my boyfriend, Alan, who is deaf about a year ago. I was the only person he could communicate at work with ASL, even though I only could sign basic words. Later, he began to teach me in more advanced ASL, and we found out we have so much in common in TV, movies, books, tastes with similar goals and desires in life that we became best friends that evolved into a romantic relationship. We're going strong 9 months now and we're compatible in every area. It's the best and healthiest relationship I ever had, and I'm always excited and giddy to see him at work or when we wake up together. He feels the same, and we're talking moving each other as soon his lease is up in 3 months from now. 2 months ago, we decided to meet each other parents, which all are hearing. He's their only deaf son. Alan met mine and it went fabulous. Then we met his parents, Irma and Paul. I thought we got along because they were smiling, gushing and laughing, but I'm beginning to believe they were putting their best masks for the sake of their son. One time on a family's birthday parties, Irma said in front of the ladies with me next to her, "It's so impressive you can talk with that speech impediment. I barely can understand you myself." She said as jokingly manner, but no one laughed. Everyone glanced at each other awkwardly and I just stared at her. Then excused myself. At first I wasn't sure if she meant as generational ignorant way like, "Who's the woman in the relationship?" to the gays. I didn't mention to my boyfriend because I was hoping it was only time remark. It wasn't. They made more comments, mostly Irma, about me struggling pronunciation or grammars, using sign language incorrectly and not teaching me the right one like Alan would do, or not having deaf//HH friends, or not going more to deaf community, and so on. It happened so gradual and subtle that I didn't realize they were being insulting to my face, that to this day I still wonder. Most of the time they would make those comments without Alan nearby. I mentioned to Alan few times and he told me that maybe they were worried I might not understand the deaf culture. He talked to them that saying those things weren't helpful and he would appreciate if they would shut it up. They didn't. Few weeks ago at barbecue party, Irma and Paul sort of insinuated about my parent for not giving best tool for me, saying it was a shame that my parent didn't put me in deaf school or letting me to get cochlea implant or letting me to study abroad in non-deaf university program. They made it sound as if my parent crippled me as person because my social and emotional network didn't consist the right people. This time I got angry and I said what they said was rude, that my parents made lot sacrifice for me and no one has the right to belittle for their choices about raising me. Alan caught at the end of the conversation, lip reading, and asked me what's going on. Not so surprisingly, Alan's parent threw me under the bus, remarking I was so sensitive after making such innocuous comment. Alan saw I was uncomfortable and asked me if I want to leave. I said yes, and we left. When we got home he asked me what they said to me. I didn't want to say what his parent told me because it was so ugly to talk about it, but I told him anyway, and he got upset for me. He FaceTimed them and said they shouldn't said that. He told them they crossed the line. They pretended they didn't know what I was talking about, that perhaps I misunderstood, considering I'm hard-hearing, which upset Alan even more. They ended arguing for a few minutes before Alan hung up. Since then, Alan has become desolate and needy. He apologized to me hundreds of times for not believing me what I said before. I told them that he has nothing to apologize because I wasn't sure if they were being snide toward me until now, and I'm not going to blame Alan for what his parents said to me. He told me he's thinking reducing contact with them, but I told Alan it wasn't necessary. He can do whatever he wants with his parent, but that I rather would not go to any of his family gathering or go his parents. He assured he would never force me or put me in that situation ever again. We're closer together than we were, but he's still sad and he no longer goes to his family gatherings or his parents. I find him staring at nothing in particular for long minutes and his eyes, which used to sparkle, are now dim. I want to cheer him up, but I'm not so sure how to in first place. I just don't know what to do, and I don't understand why his parents are so rude toward me because I'm not completely deaf considering they aren't one. Me and Diamara, she is 12 years old, have had a rough summer. She's been more defiant than usual. I've been dating her mom Mara for 2 years now. 9 months ago, they moved in with me, Maple. Both Dio and Mara have an on-again / off-again relationship with Dio's dad, Dionysus. He's pretty much never paid child support, comes and goes as he pleases into Dio's life. Typical shitty-ass part-time dad. I've tried to fill the dad role in her life, while still understanding boundaries, taking things slow, etc. This summer Dionysus decides he wants to be a real dad and takes Dio in for a month. Good for him, not my business, and Mara agrees. When Dio came back home because school started, she was a lot different. Really mean to me, very dismissive. A few days ago she got caught shoplifting at the mall. Security took her in, then called Mara, who didn't answer, then called Dionysus, who didn't answer, and finally me. I answered. They told me I had to pick her up or she'll be handed over to juvenile. I didn't say anything to her while I picked her up. I apologized to security, apologized to the store. I even tipped the security guards plus the store employees because it's up, they had to deal with that. I assured them Dio would be punished appropriately. I'm speaking to her in a strong, affirmative voice while we're in the car. Not yelling, but in a fatherly tone, I suppose. I'm telling her how up it is to steal, and how I don't. With thieves, and how I absolutely don't voluntarily. With any kind of police, so I don't appreciate any of this, nor will I accept it in my house. She snaps back that I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell her what to do. From now on, if I want to tell her something, I need to clear it with her real father first. That killed my soul. For the past year or so, I've treated her as my own daughter. I've paid for their housing, I've paid for her mom's car, her schooling, her food, everything. Her bio dad dropped $100 check off one time in the past year. In check bounced, so I had to call him up and he brought cash over. I told Mara about all of this. She was appalled at what Dio said, but she never made Dio apologize because she's not wrong, you're not her dad. A couple of days later Dio asks me for some money to pay for her uniform / accessories she needs for a sport she's involved in. I say go ask your dad. She scoffs and says her dad doesn't have the money for it, so I have to pay for it. I tell her, I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell me what I have to pay for. She cried to Mara, who tells me I'm not being an adult about the situation. Mind you, I never received an apology or a thanks for our entire previous situation. Mara says Dio is a kid and I need to stop acting like a kid too.